Okay, hello everyone. I'm Vivek Arte and I'm a cryptography engineer at Kedit. I've been helping out with contributing to building the Zcash Shielded Assets for over a year now. And what I feel and what I've heard from a number of people at Zcon4 so far is that we are all on the cusp of this amazing new frontier for Zcash, and that the Zcash ZSA protocol is going to open doors to many more applications and possibilities in the future. So over the next 15 minutes, we're going to explore some ideas that are useful, needed, and achievable using the ZSA protocol. There are ideas about issuing new assets, NFTs, and even swapping these assets one for the other. However, and also these, without doubt, are what gets a lot of us interested about the ZSA protocol. However, we were talking about this just a little while back in the previous talk. So I'm not going to focus too much on this, and I'm going to instead set my sights on some different targets. So first of all, we have an example of something that's super useful and that can be built on top of the ZSA protocol with absolutely, for free, with no additions. So this is regarding elections, which are a cornerstone of democracy and decentralized systems. Zcash Shielded Assets will provide a way for us to conduct elections in a secure manner while giving us privacy of individuals' votes. So we're going to take a look at this real soon, so stay tuned. The next thing we're going to look at is a little more sobering. As we start using ZSAs to create assets and things like stablecoins, we can foresee exchanges and regulators coming up with reasons to want to inspect and look at transactions more and more. At first glance, this seems to be at odds with the principles of financial privacy that have been so dear to Zcash. But if we look carefully, we see that we can just say, ¿por qué no los dos to this? That is, we will look at some ideas by which we can maintain the privacy features in general, while at the same time allowing assets the option to provide details to regulators and exchanges as necessary. So let's get started. We will start by looking at the voting scenario. As I mentioned earlier, voting has an important role to play in ensuring governance in decentralized systems and ensuring that it happens democratically by taking into account the opinions of all the stakeholders. It comes as no surprise that voting happens pretty commonly in decentralized autonomous organizations or DAOs. What I'm showing here is an example of a recent vote on the MakerDAO platform. So this example, if you see, has votes as public information on the blockchain. If you zoom in, you can actually see the details of who voted for whom, what are their addresses, whether they said yes or no or whatever for these votes. So there could, however, be use cases where you want some privacy and you don't want to reveal which way you voted. So we will show right now that we can use issuance and transfers of ZSAs to perform voting in this private manner. So let's set the stage. We have here a proposer who has a question that she wants votes on. She has a decision that she needs to take. And she knows who is eligible to vote on that decision. And we have a set of voters. So what are the goals we need to achieve for this election to be considered secure? First up, it should not be possible for someone to alter votes, count votes that have not been validated, or to include, count votes that have been that are invalid, or to have a valid vote not be counted. Second up, it should be possible to verify after the election that the result of the election was exactly as declared and it's not been tampered with. And last but not least, we want privacy. We do not want anyone to be able to determine which way an individual voter voted. So let's now have a look at a candidate protocol for voting with ZSAs. So the first step of the protocol between the proposer and these voters is that the proposer encodes the information about the details of the election in one ZSA token in the asset description field. The proposer then transparently issues these votes to each of the eligible voters. So since issuance is transparent, it is possible for anyone to verify that the right number of tokens were issued to the right people. We emphasize that each token must be unsplittable. That is, that the token should be the minimum value that cannot be split. This is so that a voter cannot transfer just a part of their share to someone else to split the votes into two. So the token must also be finalized at the end of issuance so that everyone is convinced that the proposer cannot subsequently, after the fact, issue some more votes and bias the results of the election in that manner. So at the end of this, each voter will have a ballot token, and it will look something like this. So then each voter, now first the proposer will publish a couple of addresses or any number of addresses based on the number of options that are there for the election. So the voter can also provide further administrative information, such as the details of how long the voting will be open for and so on. So then each voter will make a shielded transfer of their their ballot token to one of the provided shielded addresses. The shielded nature of the transfer ensures that the voter's choice remains private. It's not possible for anybody to determine which way the voter voted. Once the election has completed, the proposer can reveal the full viewing key for these addresses, and this allows public verification for anybody to see how the votes have been transferred to each address and confirm the result of the vote. It also serves as a confirmation to ensure that the proposer herself did not send tokens from one address to another and thereby manipulate the results of the election. So the voters, on the other hand, can include a unique field, unique information in the memo of their shielded transfer. This can confirm that the voter can then look at the details with the full viewing key that's publicized and then confirm that their vote was also counted in the correct address. So a great outcome of this entire process of verification is that this whole thing can be constructed as a web service on a browser itself. Only the token, the addresses, and the viewing keys will change from election to election, and the rest of the infrastructure can just be reused ad infinitum. So this is a great, simple protocol that can be used for elections, but it does not handle certain cases which may be relevant in certain contexts. So most significantly, the protocol doesn't prevent a voter from delegating their vote to someone else by performing a shielded transfer to that other person. If this is something that you want to disallow, then there will be a need for some augmentation to the protocol. On the other hand, even if you want to have delegation, this, for example, in a liquid democracy scenario, in that setting, the protocol will lack a mechanism, this protocol, the basic protocol, lacks a mechanism by which a person can check that the delegated voter actually performed the way they were supposed to. So the other problem is the question of scalability. Requiring a new token and new addresses for every single election that is held can get tiresome over time. So yeah, spoiler alert is that the idea that's coming up next can be used to sort of ameliorate this problem of having new addresses every time. But let's keep that aside for now. So this brings us to the next section of ideas regarding compliance. So exchanges usually need to keep track of certain information when they are providing services so that they can confirm that they are not abetting bad actors when they are performing their, providing their services. They do this in a few ways, such as know your customer or KYC protocols, and revealing the full trace of large transactions in some cases. So Zcash already provides viewing keys, which give us some options. As a quick recap, remember that when viewing keys are provided, it reveals information that the user has about their transactions, specifically who the transactions were made to, and in the case of transactions that were received, the amounts and memo information of those transactions. However, the introduction of ZSAs introduces new dimensions for information. For example, a person might want to comply by receiving transactions of a specific, revealing transactions of a specific asset. This granularity cannot be provided by the existing viewing keys. So we believe that these new transactions can provide us with opportunities to comply in more focused and more private ways. It's important to stress that these features are all opt-in. This is helpful because you might need to have these features if you are a stablecoin, but at the same time, you may not want to have these features of revealing everything if you're just issuing an NFT for a small party among friends or something. So the issuer here can decide whether or not a particular feature is necessary or required for the token at the time of issuance. This is the choice that allows us to balance between privacy and compliance. So we have a set of bits that are reserved for issuance flags in our structure. Right now, we only have the finalized bit that is used in this, and the rest of the bits are set to, currently not in use. What we can do is that we can use these additional bits to create flags for each of the features that we have in mind. And this allows, and then we can use that to decide whether or not we want to have these features for compliance or not. So let's now look at one of the ideas for compliance, which is per asset viewing keys. This is one idea for improving the granularity of compliance. It gives users the reassurance that they don't have to reveal every detail of their transaction history, but can just show the ones that are required for that specific asset, for the financial compliance that is necessary. As the name suggests, it gives the holder of the key a view into the transactions involving that particular asset and nothing more. So the issuer of the asset can decide whether or not to enable this key. The way we go about this is that we add an additional ciphertext to the transmitted node ciphertext in the protocol. So how that looks will be like this. There's an additional C asset ciphertext. The C asset is encrypted by the sender and can be decrypted using the per asset viewing key and will contain the same information as the C out ciphertext. So unlike C enc and C out, the C asset needs to be a public key encryption. This is because if we use symmetric key encryption, then the key will be the same for both parties, and therefore the sender will also learn the per asset viewing key, and then the sender can read all the information of all the transactions of that asset, which is not great for privacy. So what we do is we derive the per asset viewing key from the issuance authorizing key, and we derive the public key from that per asset viewing key. So, and last but not least, if the token has not opted into this, then the sender can just pick the key at random when it's generating this ciphertext. And in that case, it will not be possible to decrypt that ciphertext, so it doesn't matter. You'll find, if you actually look at this, you'll find that this is not really enough, though. We need to constrain the sender to actually perform the encryption of the C asset ciphertext correctly. We'll need to enforce this cryptographically, say using a proof system of some sort. The statement to be proved informally will be that the details of the encrypted node ciphertext should match the key that was used to encrypt the asset ciphertext. Again, since the feature is optional, the proof will have to be created and verified only in the case where we are actually opting into this feature. So we'll now move into asset, the transaction filtering. Stablecoins is the main motivation for this because they might need the ability to refuse transactions from certain addresses or learn more information about the sender before they can provide services to that sender. Another use case is something that Zuko mentioned yesterday about miners who just want to mine and then directly cash out without interacting further with the Zcash ecosystem. So the first step that we can do is to have a one-hop sort of situation where we allow senders to provide information to the exchanges to convince the exchanges that they are okay with the transaction going ahead. Subsequently, we could have further information, further techniques to ensure that there's no blacklist in the entire trace of transactions happening for that transaction. So this is, however, quite complicated. It there are some interesting ideas using cryptographic accumulators, but we won't get into that in this talk because I think I'm short on time. So, yeah, so to go through this quickly. Right, the transaction filtering will work with, it works under the assumption that you have some KYC that's happening off-chain, and that KYC includes the generation of a signing key for the customer that allows the exchange to have some confidence that, yes, this signing key belongs to this customer. So then, with that in mind, you can use the memo field. The memo field can just include the customer signature, the KYC signature of the note commitment. This can convince the exchange that the funds were actually sent by the customer correctly. So again, we will have it optional. So the memo field can be passed in this way only if this, the particular feature flag is set. So yeah, we seem to be reaching the sunset of this talk, but a new dawn for ZSAs is right on the horizon. I've only touched on a few of the things that we can put together using Zcash Shielded Assets. I've gotten to speak with a few of you throughout the conference so far, and you have some super cool ideas for using ZSAs. I really appreciate you sharing them, and I'm really excited to see them take place. The future has not been written, and there are essays about ZSAs just waiting to be composed. Thank you all for your time, and I hope to interact with you further and answer questions either after the conference, during the conference, or on the Hoover app. Thanks.